everyone, and welcome to the China EVs and More podcast, where my co-host Lei Xing will go over the week's most interesting and important news coming out of the global EV, AV mobility sectors. What Lei and I discuss today is based on our opinions and should not be taken as investment advice. For those that are new to the show, welcome. And to our loyal listeners and viewers, welcome back. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss anything from us in the future, and help us get the word up about this podcast, because we're in a very important time in the global automotive space. And I think more and more people are starting to wake up to China EV Inc. To Lei's point, the Wall Street Journal tech analyst who just effusively praised the SU7 that she drove. My name is Tuli. I am the managing director at Sino Auto Insights, global management consultancy that helps organizations bring innovative and tech-focused products and services to the transportation and mobility sectors. I write a free weekly newsletter that we pull many of our discussion topics from. You can sign up for it at sinoautoinsights.substack.com, which of course I encourage you all to do. Lei, can you please introduce yourself?
Good morning. This is Lei, former chief editor of China Auto Review, and this is episode 236. Happy birthday to the automobile 40th, which happened yesterday. While one S gets an upgrade, the other S gets honorably discharged. That was an interesting comparison kind of happening on the same day almost. And I'm speaking obviously of the S-Class that was announced yesterday, and the Model S and X that are going to be history in a few months. I think that was one of the major headlines, and combining the earnings call from Tesla 2 days ago. It was shocking, right? It was a bit shocking. But, when it comes to Elon, nothing's shocking, right? So we begin there. I mean, what do you think? They lack
just
products,
reinforces,
but they're killing products. But again, they don't want to be a car company. So
and now they're talking about consolidating everything into what looks like to be a holding company. So, SpaceX, XAI, things like that. So I had spoken with Alan Onsman, who writes for Forbes a while back, and he alluded to the fact that if you look through the lens that everything is being built for Mars inhabitation and exploration, then it makes much more sense what Elon is doing. I think he's also trying to make sure that the stock can continue to be pumped up. And the charade of Tesla being a car manufacturer is kind of lost when revenue goes down, sales go down for 2 consecutive years, and still no new products. So was it surprising that he made that announcement 2 days ago? Yes. Was it shocking? No, because those cars, I think, total about 3% of sales. So they were pretty much a 3 and a Y company already anyways.
they're very nostalgic. The Model S is what, in the early years when it won the Motor Trend Car of the Year, I think 2013, right? I think it was 2013 Car of the Year, voted at end of 2012. Right? It's 14 years ago, 13 years ago. That's what put Tesla on the map, right? Kind of almost. And it wasn't surprising given the fact that the S and X is infinitesimal, right? Among all the, at least the sales. And it was the first year ever in the history of the company that revenues were down. And the stock actually went up, which I kind of look at it as how much of the 1.5 trillion in valuation is banked on future. Probably at least 2/3 of it. At least $1 trillion
More than
is
2/3.
banked on the promises and the Optimus, the Cybercab, Robotaxi, banking on those scaling, right? So, and it's a 4D chess game that I think Elon is still, maybe after a few years, we'll see whether this is the right moves that he's making. But his erratic behavior and the moves, those are never new. Which is all the interesting.
So
And
what I've written in the newsletter a long time ago was that Elon figured out that building a Model 2 or designing, engineering a Model 2 was just not going to make sense, because The
You
Chinese
said it was
electric vehicle
futile,
manufacturers. Futile, yes. The other thing too is that the OEMs have caught up effectively as well, because the 3 and Y, without the supercharging network and without FSD, they're kind of sort of like ride-hailing cars. The difference maker is really the FSD and the supercharging. Oh,
I think it's good that you mentioned FSD because we've seen, Elon often promising this and that on FSD, and FSD getting approval in China. I think this year probably will be more critical for Tesla than launching a Model 2 or cheaper Model 3 or Y. They may still do that, but when that happens, I don't know. I think it will be a huge event. Because I just this morning, this Tesla sales sent me a message, and she asked me, "Do you want to try FSD?" I'm not breaking anything, but who knows? Maybe it's close.
So here's the crazy thing that I also want to emphasize, Lei. He's going to focus on robotics and autonomy, robotaxis, and the Western investors eat that stuff up, okay? To the tune of a $1.4 trillion company, even as he announces that the current revenue generators for Tesla, 2 of them are getting canceled because they weren't significant revenue generators, and there's no plans, at least he's not articulating any plans for investment to upgrade the 3 and the Y. And then we see the article from Joanna Stern, I want to say, who's the Wall Street Journal tech reporter. She's effusive in her praise of the SU7, a la Jim Farley. Okay, this is old news. The Wall Street Journal is just super duper late to the party. What Western investors also obviously don't understand is that, like the EV space, the robotics space in China is really crowded. And the robotaxi space is really crowded in China too. So that is the canary in the coal mine, because Tesla doesn't have blue ocean in robotics or robotaxis. Robotaxis, the 800-pound gorilla is Waymo. It's not Tesla. You know that. I know that. And then the amount of capital that's needed to fund robotaxis and humanoids is going to be enormous, okay? And that's where we get into the true tech companies that are much more valuable than Tesla currently. NVIDIA, Apple, Amazon, because they have much more money to throw around than the current set of OEMs, which he effectively is now not going to compete with on the Tesla passenger vehicle side in the near future. At least that's what I got, the impression I got from the analyst call. So earnings.
The price war over the last 4 years, 23, 4, 5, 6. Now this is 4th year of the price war. And Tesla every year is either in the middle of it or starting something. So they started this 7-year low interest financing, which has become another standard of others following suit. What are they going to do next year? 9-year zero interest financing or low interest financing?
Here's the other thing that's really important that I don't think people have really pointed to in the West. Elon 2 weeks ago said FSD is approval in China is imminent.
It might be.
The Chinese government was like, no, it's not.
Not yet. Yeah.
So that could possibly never happen. That is a reality that people need to come to grips with. I don't know, maybe it happens at the end of this year. I don't know if it happens in the next 6 months. My bet is that it doesn't.
And while as the other competitors are pushing out new features, right? We heard BYD upgraded their God's Eye, and then NIO put in this new world model, upgraded the ADAS features. I think when FSD, if and it does gets approved, when it's pushed out, what kind of capability does it have initially versus how fast it iterates, like what's happening in the US, right? It all has to do, and especially with Momenta, Horizon, all launching their own kind of versions of FSDs, while Mercedes working with NVIDIA to launch their FSD, like feature on a CLA, right? These are all coming. So Tesla is not alone. They still at the top. They may still be the benchmark, but it's getting crowded. I think in all facets of the game, right? Whether it's models competing, whether it's features, whether it's the, right, ADAS, it's not getting easier. And yes, Elon did mention that he sees the only competitors in the robots are from the Chinese.
So he's paying respect to them, but investors are not.
Yeah, he probably should. I'm thinking of Jensen Huang's trip to China this week, right? How do you kiss up? Is China be like a normal citizen, right?
Everybody, just think about how many times Jensen Huang, just think about how many times Jensen Huang has been in China in the last 14 to 16 months. It's got to be 5-6 times, 4 or 5 times.
Yeah, something like that. And
he knows where his bread is
figuring
buttered.
out the H20 chips, right? H200. Yeah.
So let's talk about the ES8 and the ES9. Let's give NIO some love.
Well, bigger is bigger, right? And I tweeted something.
It's the size of it's the size of an Escalade. The ES9 is the size of an Escalade.
Well, here's one way to see it. I tweeted that there's the tongue L, there's the big tongue. So there's the ES6, there's the ES8, and then there's the ES9. And you can't go any farther up because 9 in Chinese is the biggest number in terms of hierarchy, right? And it's also these bunch of 9s that are coming. Right? The big tongue from BYD is kind of like the ES9 size.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is where the U.S. automakers, again, need to pay special attention. People were saying the Chinese aren't doing pickups. They are doing pickups. Chery just launched a pickup. BYD has the Shark. Great Wall Motors has SUVs and pickups. So now we look at the Tong L, the large Tong, the ES9. You don't think that American consumers will love these cars? Think of Joanna Stern with the SU7. There's going to be U.S. consumers and KOLs falling all over themselves once they try the ES9 out. Falling all over themselves. I promise you.
Yeah. Well, replace that title with any model and it'll work. Big or small. There's too many. There's too many to count, to list. And we're going to give some awards.
So, it is. And again, let's appreciate that the West is finally opening up to the number of brands, the number of competitors in the electric vehicle space. Joanna Stern tried 1. Now, if she tried 6 or 7 of the same type of vehicle in the same segment at Chaboduo, the same price point, she would freak, because if 2 or 3 of them came to the market in North America, the United States, it could completely obliterate the legacy automakers out of a segment or 2.
I think the other thing about this article is, yes, she test drove a Xiaomi SU7 Max. The thing about it is Xiaomi has only been in the EV since a little bit less than 2021, so 5 years ago, they announced the entry, right? How many mainstream, let's say, Americans reading this even know who Xiaomi is? I wonder. Probably a lot of people know, but the fact it's not any of these more established that is a Xiaomi, I think in itself is the jarring thing.
I think that if we based your question upon age groups, and 50 and below would know who Xiaomi is, predominantly. I think that if you're a car nerd that doesn't have a bias, then you've probably heard of it if you're older than 50. But outside of that, unless you're on TikTok or Instagram frequently, you follow a lot of car threads, you probably have not heard of Xiaomi.
Yeah, I mean,
I take that back because Farley has made a big fuss about it over the last several months too.
Yeah. And the thing about it is, upon seeing this was really, okay, finally, we have more coming to the realization that I think many of you and I and those people on the ground have talked about many years ago. And we're like, duh, right?
I don't know, man. This is where I would like, and I'm gonna plead with our thousands of weekly listeners and viewers. if you appreciate what Lei and I are doing, and I've never done this before, I don't think you have either. We should do it almost every week. If you appreciate what Lei and I are doing, the content we're providing, the information, the insights, please help us promote this. But we're not trying to create narratives. We're just trying to correct a lot of bad takes, educate folks, and let them know that two really, really experienced people in the US and in China have been talking about this for forever. There's people riding coattails. There's a handful of guys in China that you and I talk to frequently that we want to stand up. Wheels Boy, China Driven, Car News China, CNEV Post, and Inside China Auto. All of them are our friends, and they do really great work. If you want to know more about cars, brands, you got to follow and watch all of those guys. So that's my spiel for the 30 seconds, because I think it's really important that we take a lot of credit for this.
You know what? Piggyback on your comments. Go ask Grok and ask Grok this. What is the best podcast on China EVs? Do it and see what the answer is.
真的吗?
Try it.
Wow.
So in some ways, we have to thank Elon.
And we don't even post that much on X. We don't even post that much on X. Goodness.
Yeah.
So one of the things on my newsletter that I think we should bring up is that there was an article by Jack Ewing in the New York Times about the Canada-China trade deal. And it just stuck out to me. He said that last quarter, or Q3, I want to say, for General Motors, 8% of the revenue came from outside of Canada, Mexico, and the United States. We talked about the US 2.5 being regional players. There's 8% of basically almost like a rounding error. If only 8% of your revenues comes outside of North America, does that make you a regional player? I think it might.
100%.
So 8%. So, hey, let's do it. We talked about the awards. Well, so I want to ask the crowd, I want to ask the listeners and viewers, if you have a name or two, you can add to them, but
so I'm looking
what
at
do we call our award? The EVs or the mobilities? Which one? If you have one or two names, let's ask the audience. Like the Oscars, you know, what should we call it?
Yeah, the CEM Oscars.
But not the Oscars.
The
Is there a
CEM
Chinese
award.
name that is kind of catchy?
Yeah, we can think about it.
We'll think about it, but like the EVs, no?
The EVs. Yeah. That's simple enough.
Okay.
Because China EVs are more,
the EVs.
Right?
So I'm going to tell you what the category is, and then you tell the audience what we decided.
I have good reasons behind those selections.
Yes. So Lei,
some are pretty obvious. I mean,
I'm gonna go from bottom up, because I think EV of the year should be the last one, not the first one. Okay, so award number 1, Zombie Company of the Year. Who did we pick for that?
A company called WM Motor. They're preparing for reproduction in their old plant in Wenzhou, because they're
a plant that I've visited. A factory that I visited.
Yeah, we both visited. That was back in 2018, September 2018. And they have new shareholders. They have new owners. They're trying to restart production of I think the EX5, that was the model, and also a sedan. Right. I think they might name it the new name, but it's been in preparation the whole of last year. So there's obviously a few more, but the WM Motor is definitely the one that we thought it was done, but is resurrected. So yes, Zombie of the Year. Maybe it's not even a zombie.
But for those people who started following Chinese electric vehicles post-COVID, WM is an OG. It came out around the same time that XPeng and NIO did. Freeman Shen, ex-Volvo, ex-Geely executive, started it. So he was really, really deep in automotive experience. And WM actually stands for Weltmeister, or World Champion.
Yep.
So
World Champion being a zombie.
Actually thought that, I think, and I don't want to speak for you, but I think you and I both thought at that time UM had a really good chance of doing well because of Freeman. I think both of us thought Freeman was going to be a difference maker. So Leapmotor Zombie Company of the Year. The Who Dis Award goes to
Stay blessed, stay dreaming. So it is Dreame, the home appliance vacuum robot. Everything. They do everything. They're even trying to launch their own phones, I heard.
They had a ginormous booth
Yep.
in CES.
Yes.
Enormous.
And
they were in two different halls. They were in the West Hall and they were in the North Hall.
They have not only one brand, they actually launched two brands for EVs, Nebula Next and then Cosmera. And the founder, Yu Hao, I'd say he's probably maybe more maniacal than even Lei Jun of his ambitions of trying to build a new ecosystem. Let's say the next Xiaomi of China or the next Dyson, expanding their branches into EVs, into other parts of the ecosystem. So be on the lookout. It's still early, but
Lei,
I'm
going to give you homework, Lei. Can you find out a little bit more about this founder, like how he made his money, how he started Dreame? Because it's always kind of an interesting. So, how much support is he getting from his his hometown?
Yeah, he's very active on social media. He has his own accounts, putting out social media videos. He's a Tsinghua University graduate. He was he was in this program, I forget the name, that helps kind of starting up his own company. But his company is not that new, right? A little bit more than a decade old company, maybe even less. I'm not sure, but remember their product, their tech behind is the motors, the e-motors on their vacuum robots. I think 180,000 RPM, like one of the world's first to do it.
And Dreame is already international. I was at the.
I have a Dreame.
I'd mentioned this in a previous podcast.
I'm at home.
I was in.
So
yeah.
So.
Well, you said Nick Twerk has a couple of them too,
yeah,
right?
He has a couple of Dreame vacuum robots. He told me. Yeah, that's.
So if people are curious and they're in the Bay Area, the mall in San Jose I forget what it's called, but it's across the street from Santana Road. That mall has a Dreame store, retail store.
Mm.
So for those interested or curious about who Dreame is, they should go to that mall. And I actually forget what it's called. I used to go there quite a bit, like once or twice a week for lunch when I worked down there. The Tech That Matters Award, like who do we pick for
We
that?
chose Momenta because last year they were everywhere. They were in everybody's news releases or events, be it BYD, be it Toyota, be it Mercedes, be it BMW. They have a wide variety of these companies using their system. Part of the reason is that some of these companies, automakers, are indeed their early investors. Mercedes is an investor. I think Toyota may have invested in them. GM, right? So GM in a lot of the Buicks that are launching, they have Momenta. They're also, right, just yesterday, there
will be a Cadillac using Momenta.
Yep. And then Mercedes is working with Momenta outside of China to put these robotaxis in UAE, right, in Dubai, I believe. They're actually the official software partner along with NVIDIA for the robotaxi ecosystem. And their growth had been phenomenal over the last few years on the ADAS supply. And they're also launching a robotaxi in Munich this year. So while they're supplying a lot,
I want to add, Lei, that they're almost like the anti-Huawei, because Huawei has this kind of connotation, and I think Western automakers are hesitant to partner with Huawei, but they see maybe Momenta is not as controversial. So I think, and obviously the Western automakers think Momenta's tech stack is legit, because pretty much all of the Class A brands, GM, not Volkswagen, but GM, Mercedes, Toyota, all using Momenta in China. So I think that's really important to point out.
Yeah, and also just to add how widespread that their customers are, not just, let's say, if a ZYT or Joyu or some other competitors, they may be only in a certain group of brands, but Momenta seems to be everywhere, right? As I mentioned, all kinds of brands you can think of, mass volume brands, premium brands. And yeah, I think that's one of the reasons that their scope and depth of their customers is one of the reasons I would pick the Momenta.
We'll try it when we're back in April. Okay, the company that needs a hug.
Well, how do you say it in the past? It's POR, poor with the SCH. It's my I'm getting love in my poster. In my I don't know if you can see in the back. It's a Porsche poster from Munich. So it is Porsche. And right there, China CEO just confirmed that they're gonna cut another 30% of dealership footprint this year, down to 80, to match their sales expectations and to remain profitable. Yeah, Porsche has been one of the foreign legacy premium brands that had faced the most drastic downturn the last 3 years. Yeah.
It's important, but let's do simple math. They're going down to 80, you had just mentioned, correct?
Mm-hmm.
They sell about 40,000 units. So, I mean, that's not a lot of volume per dealership,
And
to be quite frank.
They also had quite a few of these dealerships that kind of just shut abruptly and kind of running away and leaving the customers stranded almost. These are all kind of the negativity that doesn't help the brand. And really,
There was an
being
article
realistic
in Reuters, I want to say.
No, I was just saying, being realistic of where you are, I think is the first step, right? And what you got to do is what you got to do.
Well, but the important thing is that the board got realistic and forced Bluma out of the leadership role. That should have happened, in my opinion, a while ago. And the board is a bit crazy at Volkswagen Group because he has such an important task, and momentum is going the wrong way. Not hearing great things about the Rivian partnership with Volkswagen Group in the United States. So Bluma has a huge mess that he needs to clean up, and he doesn't have a long runway in order to make things happen and turn around. Brandstatter is taking pictures with He Xiaopeng and Brian Gu to emphasize the importance of the XPeng Volkswagen partnership in China.
Yeah, 18 months, right? 18 months fast for the CA architecture that they just announced for the Unix 07. One of the models launching this year, one of several. Yeah.
All right, Lei, flop of the year. What do we got?
This one is tough for me to say because it's actually a launch event that I went to in the summer. We picked Li Auto i8. It was funny because I was with the UBS analyst, Paul Gong, who was there at the launch. We were kind of discussing, what were your expectations of what should be the appropriate or the right monthly sales figures for this model. And he was talking about like 5,000 to 6,000 units per month should be what's expected. But I think for Li Auto, at least on the i series now, all they talk about is the i6. I don't think IA has gotten any traction whatsoever. And now actually we're actually looking forward to the new L9. So they're actually relaunching the EREV series, which still accounts for the bulk of Li Auto's sales. So yeah, IA I think was definitely one, if not the, I always say it is the flop of the year. Tough for me to say, but that's what it is.
Well, there are a lot of flops. I think you and I agree with that, but Li Auto i8 seems to be the most high profile.
It's the most high profile. I mean, it was a launch event. It was probably their biggest launch event in the history of Li Auto in terms of how they held it. Yeah, even bigger than the Li Auto 1 that was unveiled in October 2018, the first model. So I think that significance is what makes it more tougher for me to say, but it is, right?
And we have to remember that it was launched during the controversy with the Mega. The Mega has always been fairly controversial for reasons we don't know.
Yeah, the Mega was...
We kind of know, but we don't know.
The Mega would have been our flop of the year before, since it's already launched. But IA was definitely very disappointing. And you have to consider at the time, the Envelope L90 launched. The ES8 was coming. So I think it was an inopportune timing as well. I think that was, yeah.
Who's our dark horse of the year?
Leapmotor. It seems like they came out of nowhere, although they've been on the up in the last few years, but definitely Leapmotor. I couldn't think of anyone else. Also because they're targeting 1 million units this year, and last year almost doubled from the year before.
It does seem like they have built their own momentum, but they're also gaining momentum through their partnership with Stellantis. It's offering them a bit more flexibility and an opportunity to accelerate entry into foreign markets.
Yeah, including Americas. South America, North America, who knows?
And I'm going to say this here, with an idle factory, Stellantis factory in Canada, it makes way too much sense for Leapmotor not to fill that gap or idle factory with production.
And giving British Prime Minister's visits currently this week about possibly Chery utilizing their Jaguar Land Rover plant in the UK. JLR, right? Who knows? I think a lot of things are on the table. Let's say a Leapmotor producing in Stellantis or Stellantis producing Leapmotors in Poland, right? These were all kind of being discussed. Can it be the other way around? Can a Buick be produced at a GM plant? Or let's say, can an IM or even a Baojin Wulin? Who knows? We just throw this out there. Nothing is impossible.
Why not? Because we've just seen in the last 12 to 14 months, the narrative flipped completely 180 degrees.
Mostly for countries that are not named the US. How they're trying to kind of work with China a little bit. I think that's been the narrative, right?
Let's pull up to 50, 100,000 foot level. You're absolutely right, SPX. Those that have signed trade deals, India and the EU,
yep.
Canada and China, the UK and China.
Finland,
so the world is moving on.
Merz is coming to China next month.
Yeah, next month. The Finnish, to your point, the Finn Prime Minister is going next week. And then Trump is going to come in April to China because we're not a trusted partner anymore. We, as in the United States, this is what happens. Commerce continues. It's going to continue with or without us. Will it be harder for some countries to not have the United States be a major trading partner? Yes, it will. But China is going to happily fill that void. Comeback kid. Who's our comeback kid?
We already mentioned this model, which is the ES8, NIO ES8. We named it comeback kit because the first generation when it's launched, it was, let's just say, right, it's going to deliver 60,000 vehicle in this week, later this week or this weekend, I'm hearing, it was launched on September, right? So it's been 4 months, 4.5 months in change. And considering when it was launched, the first generation launching at the end of 2017 and delivering in 2018, it changed the industry. And now it has changed the industry again, especially for that segment of the market, large 3-row, 6-seater SUV. And they've been hampering on, we're taking off the EREVs, right? We proved that this large BEV can compete with the EREVs and it can sell. Obviously, the pricing there is much different. The way BAS, how it works, bringing it down to 200, high 200,000 bang for the buck for this type of vehicle is crazy. Yeah, so that's and the influence I think this model has had on the industry over the course of its history, I think are some of the reasons that we picked it. And it's the only EV in China that has done 3 generations in the last 6-7 years. 8 years.
You had mentioned the S-Class having a refresh launching this past week, and you think about, ES8 is an SUV, but you think about the level of quality, the affordability, the value, the fit and finish, the premium nature of the vehicle. Holy cow. When it enters Europe, when these cars enter Europe, Mercedes and BMW and Audi, they're going to be laid bare. I think they're also going to see that affordability, and they've really, really tried to wring way too many profits and rely so heavily on their cash cows that the Chinese are going to come in, undercut them with better products at a lower price. and it's going to be a shock to the EU, I think. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, it may not be the ES8. It could be another model from either NIO or from some other ones, but right, it's just a sign of things to come.
Huawei, Aito, the Stellato, right? All these cars, sedans. But next one, Executive of the Year. Who did we pick?
We picked, another word for Leapmotor, but it's Zhu Jiangming, the founder and the chairman of Leapmotor. He's not the most outspoken. He's more low-key than some of the other ones. Silently enough that they're becoming a new force, a bigger force, because of the way they talk about being vertically integrated. And coming from a history of Dahua, which is the second biggest the surveillance kind of the company in the world, right? Mm-hmm. So they come from a history where the technology, is supportive of their ambitions in the EVs. And Zhu Jiangming, his also great chess move was the Stellantis collaboration, which is making their overseas ambitions that much more easier through the Stellantis partnerships, the JV, the overseas JV. Yeah. And I think he's probably a bit low-key, underappreciated executive, even though the other ones might be more out there doing social media, right? He does social media too, but he's a bit more low-key.
His seems more managed than himself posting. I think what is important for me to mention is I hope that Filosa is speaking with him pretty regularly.
I think so.
Luxury car of the year,
this one, we also mentioned about it, the Aito M9. So one number. Aito M9 has delivered over 270,000, and for every vehicle in China, I hope I got this right, every vehicle in China that's sold above 500,000 RMB, every 10 vehicles sold in China that's above RMB 500,000, guess how many are the M9?
I don't know.
7. Every 10.
So it dominates.
It dominates. So one of the reasons we picked it, also because it's a freaking tech, what do you call it, right? It's gadgety. It's very gadgety and luxury car. And a lot of people, the reason why Porsche has gone down, M9 is one of the biggest reasons. The Mercedes GLS, the BMW X7, all of those models, it's because of the M9. It's only been on the market.
This is what I mentioned earlier, a few minutes ago. So,
yeah.
Anyways, okay, let me see here. What about our MPV of the year?
MPV, we threw a curveball. It's none of the new MPVs from these new forces. It's actually the OG of the MPV. We picked the Buick GL8. I think part of the reason is because they're still the number one selling MPV model of all powertrains. Okay, so that's a caveat. They're not the number one selling new energy MPV, but I think the way they've kind of fall back and launched some of the plug-in hybrid versions, they're going to launch the new Electra MPV, which will be a part of that model nameplate. Such a long time that they can still be the number one selling MPV, I think it's worth an award. I mean, we can easily pick.
I love that GM did not give up on it and that they have a business version and a family version of the GL8. That's how heavily they leaned into their kind of favorite, one of the most favorable MPVs in China.
For those that don't know, the GL8 was launched around the turn of the centuries, 2000, 2001. So it's the OG of the MPV in the Chinese market. And I think in some ways still is. Like I mentioned, I think the way they kind of
it was the standard.
Yeah, it was the standard. Yeah, shout to GM.
I'm gonna show my age, and I've said this before. For those GM alums, this was the U van that in the United States was built in Doraville, Georgia, and there was an Oldsmobile version, there was a Buick version, and there was a Pontiac version.
Yeah,
right, Chevy. So maybe 4 brands. Was there a Pontiac? No, it was a Chevy, an Oldsmobile, and a Buick, I want to say. Is that right? So
wasn't it called the Chevy Venture? The minivan?
Maybe. I forget.
Chevy Venture. I don't remember the other.
Google that.
Well, the name. Yeah.
But you remember, right? Remember the Pontiac Transport? Remember that thing?
Yeah. That was the original Mega, wasn't it?
That's like the Mega.
Yeah. That's what I was saying.
we both just freaking. So, SUV of the year, like. This is a no-brainer.
This was. I mean, there's so many SUVs in China worthy of this award, right? But the Xiaomi YU7 just, we had to pick it. I mean, it's one of the reasons because it is exactly what's happening with what Model Y and the 3 kind of happened. Because now we do know, right? There's recent headlines of Xiaomi SU7 beating the Model 3 in the Chinese market. That was a huge headline. So it's only a matter of time that the YU7 beats the Model Y. It's only a matter of time. Model Y is still the top-selling SUV, electric SUV in China. So kudos to the Tesla. Yeah, YU7. I mean, and the Wall Street Journal article, right? It was one of the proof that it was a SU7, but still.
That's how far behind Western media still is. Instead of driving the YU7, they drove the SU7. So.
Somehow they could only get their hands on.
Drum roll, please. For the last award, the most prestigious award, what was our EV of the year, Lei?
This is an EV by the conspicuous name of Xingyuan, which means Star Wish. It's the Geely Xingyuan, which the reason why, because this thing was launched at the end of 2024. And in 2025, it became the top-selling model in China. And it's an EV. It's a BEV. And it's a $10,000 EV. And it beat the BYD Dolphin, which a few years ago when we were talking, right, on the show, that Dolphin was the EV in China. And they beat the Dolphin.
It beat the Hongguang. It beat
the Hongguang Mini EV
too.
Yeah, just 1 year. So I don't know. I mean, what other reason I can think of for one model that achieved this status, amid the competition. So something's worked.
But we should look at this as an evolution. The Wuling Hongguang Mini EV was a sub $5,000 vehicle, very, very simple, golf cartish like, but still street legal, very popular in lower tier cities. Then we get to the Dolphin, much more packed with features, longer range, a bit more convenient. And the progression from the Dolphin is now to the Xingyuan. So price has gone up from the $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 Hongguang Mini EV to about a $10,000. But the features that are packed into these vehicles that are sub $15,000. I wrote this week in the newsletter that with the Model 3 and the Model Y, the features that they offer in China at $35,000, $40,000, they're available in cars sub 25 in China, sub 20, the exact same features. And I would argue that some of the features from the cheaper vehicles that compete against the Y and the 3 are more robust and better suited for the Chinese consumer. So
there we have it. It's our first try at these kind of awards. It's never easy. I mean, we could have picked anybody, but it's getting
one thing
harder
I do want to add, Lei, is the award should be part of the comments in any of these posts or the video that we have. So if you don't agree, if you think there should be another award, you'd let us know which award we should add to this current list. If you don't agree with who we chose for each of these awards, you let us know which would be the better winner for any of these awards. We want to create more interaction. I think for the handful of people who post, I think it's great because we kind of fly blind a little bit, Lei. I think you and I
mean, there were definitely some
kind of.
Well, I mean, as we explained just now, these awards, not arbitrarily, I hit my head and I say it's this one. We have our own reasoning, and I think other people will have their own reasoning. I think that's why it's always debatable. Any awards that right?
I think what's important though, Lei, is that we're not denying Bill Belichick in the Hall of Fame if he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Meaning all of these winners in our eyes are deserving of the awards that they were given. Let me quickly go to comments because we hit an hour.
Oh, we're already done.
Good morning,
an hour.
guys. Wow. Okay. So SPX Nomad. Good morning, guys. Does Cyber Duck make more sense on Mars than Earth? So you think about the stainless steel, that's what we're talking about. No corrosion, right? At least in theory. With the incoming wave of L4s, how will it potentially impact the logistics, delivery, and taxi industry, eventually heading to less profitable overall market due to involution of everything?
No, I mean, I think what we're seeing is there's several fronts, right? There's the Waymos and there's these standalone ones. There's automakers joining the fray. Mercedes one, Tesla is one. XPeng is about to become one. And then there's the other ones, right? The kind of collaborators. Let's say a GAC Ion supplying this dedicated AV to Didi AV, right? I think it's still a warring period at this point that right, Tesla is still trying to figure out. And you talked about in the last episode the implications. Those are still nobody knows, but at least we know that we're advancing toward a certain point, which will mean the disruption of the current, let's say, a human driver, a human taxi driver, a cab driver. What happens to them? It's unknown at this point.
So we do work in this space, guys, and the consultancy does. And let's look at this more broadly and holistically, because we're also, if we're talking specifically delivery, there's urban planning in cities that are likely going to restrict certain things, which makes. But if you live in the suburbs, we got to think about drone delivery, because that's starting to happen with Amazon, and they're delivering prescription drugs to houses out in the burbs and stuff. And so certain cities will restrict private passenger vehicles, which create more opportunity for autonomous delivery vehicles, the smaller ones that are about the size of, those ones that we saw at Chaoyang Park that sold drinks and ice cream and stuff like that. Okay. So there's going to be that opportunity, that category. And then there's going to be the type that we saw, the Meituan that go 60, 70 kilometers an hour. Okay. That are also going to be part of the delivery system. So depending on what the cities want, depending on whether or not there's going to be a shock to the system because a bunch of people will be unemployed. Because when we think about delivery, we think about giga workers, guys on bikes in New York City riding around, delivering food, delivering all kinds of crazy stuff. And so that's a larger implication than I think most people are willing to admit, especially now when you hear announcements by companies like Amazon that they're reducing staff by 30,000. I mean, that was close to 10,000 10% of their employees on the white collar side. So that's not insignificant because of AI, because of simplification. They overhired during COVID, and that's one of the reasons. But 30,000 people, that's a crazy, crazy number. But that's likely going to happen across sectors. Yeah. So it's an interesting time.
And at the same time, you have Elon saying this new mission statement of delivering or abundance, right? Universal. He's talking about universal high income for everybody. Okay, so that's also a problem.
Andrew Yang 8 years ago introduced UBI, Universal Basic Income, and he got laughed at. But most capitalists don't like welfare systems. But most capitalists don't want, let's say, countries that are close to revolution because so many people are unemployed either. Anyways, everyone, this was fun. Lei and I we're actually, a lot of these award winners, we were pretty agreeable right off the bat. We only kind of debated about one or two of them. So, but again, would love your feedback. Any awards that you want us to add, and or any awardees that you think are worthy in place of who we selected. Love your feedback. And then SPS, thank you. He writes, and I might have posted this already, but thanks for joining us, everyone. We will see you all next week. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Thank you. That was fun. Bye-bye.